So it was then the location for the peace treaty signed in 1919 to end World War I. And now the Palace of Versailles, just outside of Paris, also the location for the signing by Donald Trump of the US and Iran peace agreement. Trump signing after a day of the G7 summit, even as he threatened, though, to resume attacks if Iran fails to honour its commitments. The deal, also signed by Iran, it offers a permanent end to hostilities, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and the starting of a 60-day negotiating clock to reach a final deal on Iran's nuclear program. Criticism, though, that it offers Iran several benefits while extracting little in return. Well, we'll discuss it in just a moment. But first of all, Ellen Gainsford has this report.
This was not easy, I can tell you.
There were historic surroundings for US President Donald Trump's much-anticipated signature. The agreement was inked in the Palace of Versailles, with French President Emmanuel Macron looking on. President Masoud Pezeshkian did the same on behalf of Iran. So what's in the 14-point memorandum of understanding? The agreement extends the current ceasefire, including in Lebanon, leaving 60 days for Iran and the US to come to a more detailed, longer-lasting agreement. Concessions to Iran include allowing Tehran to sell its oil freely, immediately, while the full lifting of sanctions and the release of frozen assets will happen over time, linked to the progress of future talks. And a $300 billion fund will be developed to help the reconstruction of Iran. It's currently unclear whether the US will contribute. It's a controversial issue that's been much criticized, including within Donald Trump's own party. It reopens the Strait of Hormuz, with 2 months assured toll-free. But for now, there's no longer-term guarantee that Iran won't impose a fee. The US will also end its naval blockade on Iran. On the all-important nuclear issue, Iran has agreed to never develop a nuclear weapon and pledged to dilute its stocks of enriched uranium. But the exact details of how this will be guaranteed will be hammered out in future talks on an extendable 60-day timeline. The JCPOA, the Obama-era agreement, which Donald Trump scrapped, took around 20 months of negotiations to develop.
Well, our International Affairs editor, Doug Herbert, is with me now here on set. Doug, as you see it, this is a deal in name only.
Well, it's not just how I see it. It's many Republicans are angry, a little bit relieved that something happened, but they're also in a state of disbelief. This is a deal in name only, and there's almost a bit of dishonesty even calling it a peace agreement, quote, a deal. It's none of the above. It's a memorandum of understanding in itself is a mishmash of words that means nothing. Boil this down to its essence right now. Even the pro-Trump New York Post, the tabloid in New York City Trump loves, said, and this is a quote, that Trump's Iran deal gives the Islamic Republic big wins up front. America gets nothing. That is the sense you're hearing reverberating across the political spectrum, like I said, even among many Republicans, that this is a deal that no matter how Trump and his associates try to spin it, it just can't be spun. The spinning needs spinning, in a sense. And why do I say that? Well, first of all, some of the main elements. Going into this war, you'll remember that Trump vowed unconditional surrender would be the only conditions under which they'd stop bombing. Not only is this not unconditional surrender, but it seems that Iran has emerged emboldened, politically, if not militarily. Militarily, yes, it's definitely been weakened, if not decimated, but emboldened both in a political sense and perhaps in an economic sense, and I'll explain that in a sec. So the main thing that we're being sold on this deal, or Trump is trying, the Strait of Hormuz is effectively reopened. Well, true and false on two fronts. It's going to be reopened for the next 30 days. The U.S. is going to lift its blockade on Iranian ports, Iranian oil shipments in and out of its own of Iran's ports. But in effect, Iran retains leverage. It's been very clear about this. It is absolutely unclear what happens after the 60-day period. Iran says that it reserves the right to impose service fees and to retain sovereignty, effective control over the Strait of Hormuz. So right there's no deal. There is simply a memo of understanding, and my bet would be that Iran is very much going to keep its eyes on that more than fine print there. And remember, Strait of Hormuz was open before the war. So we're back to the pre-war status quo. I'll say that again. The Strait of Hormuz was open before the war. Donald Trump started this war of choice, had it effectively closed. Iran effectively closed it, so it's now reopened. We're back to where we started. The other big thing, there's no mention, by the way, of ballistic missiles. There's no mention of the proxies, Iran's sponsorship of militants throughout the region in this deal. Everything, Stuart, and I mean everything in the kitchen sink, is punted down the pitch to a later day. So we are left with a deal which, as a Republican, man named Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, who actually lost to a Trump-backed MAGA candidate in a recent election. So you could say he has nothing to lose. But he basically said this is the worst foreign policy blunder by the United States in decades. And that is a sentiment that we are hearing echoed across the political spectrum today.
There's another big unknown, isn't there, Doug? I mean, notably, of course, is Benjamin Netanyahu going to play ball with this deal?
Benjamin Netanyahu was not privy to this deal. He did not sign the deal. And you're absolutely right. This is not a minor point. This is not, stop being a party pooper and torpedoing the deal before it's even had a chance. This is perhaps one of the most massive unknowns in this deal, because as of this hour, Israel has made no indication, in fact, just the contrary, that it is ready to give up, as it sees it, its right to retaliate against Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militant group in Lebanon, which essentially controls the country, calls the shots there. And Iran has made it clear that if that war continues and that if Israeli troops, here's a big one, don't withdraw from southern Lebanon, which they've essentially occupied. If that doesn't happen, the war could resume again. Iran is ready to consider the so-called deal, which isn't a deal, violated. So some of the pillars of this deal, can't emphasize it enough. It's not torpedoing the deal. It's not being negative. It's not being subjective to say this isn't a deal. The Strait of Hormuz is back to what it was before the war for now, for a few days. Iran still says it controls it. The Israeli troops remain in southern Lebanon. There's been no indication Benjamin Netanyahu, facing elections in October, is not enthralled to his hardline coalition government and will do their bidding and not Trump's bidding. So, in a sense, all bets are off. And the nuclear issues, all of it remains to be negotiated. As the New York Times said in its lead editorial today, opinion editorial, the U.S. has emerged economically, politically, and militarily weaker from this deal. There's no other way to spin it, even if it's obviously a relief that for now the guns have been silenced.